Good morning. As was mentioned in the introduction, I've been working with some communities of smallholder coffee farmers. This has been for the better part of the last 3 years in a region of Guatemala called Yepocapa. If you're familiar with Antigua in Guatemala, imagine going from Antigua around to the other side of the Fuego volcano, and you'll be in Yepocapa. In fact, this image that's showing here was taken from the Yepocapa side of that volcano. So we've been studying the obstacles to uptake of technology within these smallholder coffee farming communities. And unsurprisingly, what we found is that profitability is the main constraint that these farmers face. And this is across the board. And that affects their ability to innovate, sure, but it also affects their ability to do pretty basic things, like fertilize. Farmers are having to make decisions about the amount of fertilizer that they're using, about how often they fertilize, how many times a year they fertilize, and are they able to make these decisions and do this as often and as much as they need to in order to have healthy plants. We do see that farmers are becoming disenchanted with this situation as prices continue to remain low and have been low now for a couple years in this region. And we do see that farmers are beginning to leave coffee. So these Yepocapa farmers are finding other crops or sending a family member outside of the region to the city or to another country to bring in an income to help sustain the family. And I was asked to come here today and talk to you about this issue of profitability from the perspective of the smallholder farmer. And I was thinking about that and what I could bring to this discussion that might be useful. And I was thinking about how we're the specialty coffee industry. This is the Specialty Coffee Association event. And so we can pay higher prices, right? I'm sure that many of you that are in the audience today pay really reasonable prices for some of the coffee that you buy. The issue is that the quality has to be there. So the quality has to be there for the coffee to have the value, for us to be able to pay the prices that might make coffee a little more profitable for the producer. We have a real interest in supporting the smallholder farmer as they produce a substantial amount of the world's coffee supply. So they are having a large effect on our industry. But in reverse, our industry, especially specialty coffee, can have a large effect on them. So many of these farmers, coffee producers, are dealing with all kinds of issues. And to showcase this and bring this home, we superimposed what we consider the global coffee belt, where coffee is produced, over 3 other global belts. So this is the conflict belt, where civil war has been more recent, in many cases, within the last 30 years. So if you think about that, and the average coffee farmer is 55 years old, that means that the average coffee farmer has lived through civil war in their lifetime. These other 2 maps are the World Hunger Map. That's showing where starvation and malnutrition are concentrated around the globe. There's the malaria belt, where communicable disease is more prevalent in the world. So this is evidence, this is showing you how coffee producers are living and the lack of resources that are available in these areas. One of the things that happens when you grow up with a lack of resources is you have a lack of confidence. You're not quite sure what your options are, you have limited options, and if you want to do something more with yourself, you're not quite sure how to do that. And this is something that I actually have personal experience with. So I'll explain to you why I personally identify with the smallholder coffee farmer. I was raised in a single-parent, low-income household in South Seattle. My mother was pretty preoccupied as I was growing up, so I was left to figure things out kind of on my own and without a lot of resources. And I was watching my friends, or my friends were just like me, from broken homes, sometimes having drugs in the family background, low history of formal education in the family, low resources, all of us just trying to figure out what to do with ourselves, in the situation that we found ourselves. And in my own experience, and in watching the experience of the people that I spent the most of my time with and have cared about, I've been really curious and paying attention to what is it that causes somebody, or what is it that allows somebody to bring themselves up when they are in a situation where they have low resources. So you can either have resources or you don't, and what do you do in the case that you don't? So what I have realized, or what I've come to in my paying attention to this over the years, is that these are the three factors that are involved when resources aren't. There's motivation, there's support, and there's education. So motivation we'll define as a drive to do something more. This is an ambition that comes from within oneself, and understanding that there is something greater than us, and wanting to connect to that bigger, greater thing. Support. Support I will define as an effort made by somebody else in your direction that helps you do something that you were unable to do otherwise because you either lack the resources, lack the confidence, or lack the know-how. And so this is something that somebody else can give to you when you don't have those things. And I've received a lot of support over my life. I think people were able to see that I had a lot of motivation as a kid, that I was interested in science and art and these bigger things, and that I wasn't going to get the resources that I needed to do something with that, with what was available within my own context. So people jumped in and gave me support. And in some cases, this was grants or fellowships, monetary support that have helped me get through school. In some cases, this was just somebody lending me their ear to listen, or a space. I remember in high school, I had an art teacher that let me hang out in his room in my free periods, and I was able to just do arts and talk to him about things and just sort of be me and have some self-expression in the art that I was doing. And I didn't have a lot of spaces like that at that time in my life, so that was a huge support to me. And the other factor is education. Education is indestructible capacity. You cannot destruct this capacity. This is knowledge about things that help us to make more profound and longer ranging and better decisions. And this is really the key to making us different. If we want to live in a different kind of a context, we have to be able to fit that context. And in reverse, as we change ourselves, the context around us changes also. And education really is the key to that, to becoming different, to changing fundamentally who we are, and to see that ripple effect in the world around us. And I don't think that myself or my friends that I grew up with are really any different from smallholder farmers around the world who are growing up without a lot of resources, but who want to achieve something more with themselves. I would like to introduce you to one of the regions or one of the communities that I work with. This is ECA Montellano. They are located in a town called Montellano, which is right outside of Yepocapa. This is a cooperative or an organization of smallholder farmers that are 187 of them, 187 members. They're about 32 years old. They farm coffee on what used to be a large finca before the war and was reappropriated to smallholder farmers. These people come from 4 different parts of Guatemala to be here. So after the war, they traveled to this area to set up camp and start coffee farming. And there's a small group of this membership that is realizing that if they change a little bit of what they're doing, they can have a product that the specialty market might be interested in. And so they're forming this group, and they're trying to figure out what they need to do in order to have a coffee that might be worth, might have more value. And so this past year, they started selecting out some coffee that they picked really well. So they thought, what's the easiest thing for us to do? We can just try to pick our coffee the best as possible, and we'll have only mature beans, and that'll be specialty coffee. And what they're starting to realize in this process is that there's a lot for them to learn. So picking is a great place to start, but there will be a lot more for them to learn. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Francisco Calel, presidente de la vigilancia, la ECA Montellano. Con todo gusto, un saludo para todos ustedes.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Teresa Orozco, soy parte del Comité de Finanzas de la pequeña empresa campesina. Trabajamos aquí hombres y mujeres.
Mi nombre es Manuel Zorín, de la comunidad.
Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Horacio Matzir, soy secretario de la ECA Montellano. Para mí es un gusto poder dirigir unas palabras hacia ustedes que nos pueden ver desde donde estén.
Estamos en lucha para poder encontrar un mercado mejor.
Pues nosotros hemos luchado para mejorar nuestros cafetal, o nosotros también queremos ser más el café especial para que haya un buen precio.
Y lo que se está haciendo ahorita es tratar de cambiar la forma de cómo empezar a recolectar café mejorado, un café especial.
Entonces, a raíz de eso, nosotros hoy en día estamos trabajando de otras formas que podríamos decir tratar la manera de sostenernos, ser autosostenibles con nuestros gastos, con todo lo que lleva el proceso del café.
Nos gustaría conseguir un mercado, nos gustaría conseguir cómo exportar. Claro, estamos muy interesados. Nuestra gente está muy preocupada por el precio que está muy bajo. Y entonces estamos muy interesados de conseguir un mercado que sea mejor.
So I hope that it's clear from that video, just from the introduction, that these folks are motivated. These are motivated farmers. I think that it's also clear that they need a lot of support and education. So as they were working with this small lot this last year and they picked well, then they realized that they had to figure out how to pay their pickers better, right? Or incentivize picking mature beans over just picking by quantity. So they had only paid a certain way in the past, and they realized that they had to fix that if they were going to get a different product. Then they realized that there was this information that they needed to keep track of with the coffee, variety, altitude, the farmer, day it was picked, things like this. They hadn't had this experience before of having to keep track of information about small lots of coffee. Once that coffee was at the mill, they had to figure out how to keep it separate at the mill and keep the information with each lot. So there's a lot of things that they're realizing they're going to have to learn how to do, and they're going to have to get better at if they want to continue in this and grow their volume. So those are some of the things that I know about that they've had to change and learn. And I want to keep in this vein of having their voice here and having them explain their own situation. And so here's another clip of them.
Muchas veces nos vemos obligados a abandonar nuestro café.
El precio, cuando vendemos, no hay buen precio, pero estamos luchando.
Lo que queremos, pues, es ver en qué cosas más podemos mejorar. Principalmente las personas que tal vez nos ven a través de este video, que ellos nos puedan decir más o menos qué clase de café la que ellos les gusta comprar, la que ellos necesiten. Entonces, y cuáles son las características o qué qué trabajo tenemos que hacer nosotros para poder mejorar y lograr ese mercado.
Sí, nosotros lo que por lo nos necesita o lo que nos cuesta es el mercado. Cuesta, pero nosotros estamos dispuestos para cambiar muchas cosas, pues, cuestión desde el campo para hacer el café, por lo menos que sale un buen producto. Y cuestión del beneficio, y tal como el café especial, pues nosotros nos gustaría hacer más volumen, tal como este año pues es poco, pero es para empezar. Ahora nosotros lo que queremos cambiar un poco el beneficio, todo lo que necesiten, o más cortar el café en la mata que sea bien maduro para que haya un buen producto.
Estamos más contentos todavía y la gente está más contenta y están más con ganas de sembrar más, trabajar más con el café, más para tener un buen futuro.
So that was Teresa, Francisco, Horacio, and Manuel explaining to you their hopes for the future, explaining to you a little bit about their motivation, what motivates them, and explaining to you some of the support and education that they know that they're going to need to continue to succeed in coffee production. So I would like to ask two things of the audience. We're going to make pledges tomorrow, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it today. And I would like you guys to do two things. One is to think about this issue of profitability in these terms. Think about information and not just price. And think about what we in this room, some of the most experienced and successful people in the specialty coffee industry, have that we can share with producers. These farmers don't know anything about specialty, but they want to know. They want to know what it means. They want to know how to assess it. They want to know how they can produce it. They want to know what varieties they need to plant. They want to know how they need to manage their fields and their post-harvest management of their coffee. That's information that we have that we can share with them. So that's number one, to think about the information issue. And number two is to make a pledge to share information over this next year with somebody who hasn't had it. You'll notice people that have this extra motivation, and you'll notice them trying. And look at that situation and see what you can do and what you can add in the form of support or education to help that person do something more with themselves. I have personal experience with this. I know that it works. Thank you.